with will make you the most proud. And if you break that spirit, if you try to get them to be just like everybody else, and the same thing is true in your relationship with your spouse or with your coworkers and with strangers or whatever. Don't pursue that which you don't like. If someone treats you rudely and you don't want to have rudeness in your life, then don't react with rudeness, with more of it, and don't react with hostility and anger. You're just pursuing more of that. Begin to send out love where anger and hatred and bitterness and discontent used to reside. Once you know you're no longer willing to pursue that which you don't want, your permanent position on the treadmill will be removed. You will no longer be doing those kinds of things. Use whatever strategy you need to free yourself from seeking that which you despise. So practice keeping your mouth shut. Just bite your tongue when you find yourself saying things that are going to be painful. Remove yourself physically from a potentially difficult encounter. I found that to be very effective in creating magical relationships instead of just sitting there and seething. And you're going to have these disagreements, but they don't have to result in this hatred and this bitterness. You just excuse yourself for a few minutes. You go into the bathroom and close the door and just take a few deep breaths and put yourself into alpha and come back out and remind yourself that you love this person, that you don't want to have this anger and hatred there, and that you're not asking them to change. You're just going to process it a little bit differently. Take a silent moment of reflection before you react to something, or become more intimate and try reaching out with love. I've found that if you hold the person that you love's hand and then try to be angry with them, and you just can't do it. Just the simple act of reaching out and holding their hand and then talking, you find that you want to say loving things and not hateful things. The more you practice not pursuing those things which don't work in your life, they come from the intention, they come from the soul, they come from that consciousness which says, I want my relationships to be magical. I want them to operate at the highest, most beautiful, most exquisite level. And therefore, anything that I am doing that is not manifesting that in the relationship, I am going to shift. And when you become someone who sends out love, and when you become someone who sends out harmony and sends out peace, and you have that peaceful kind of quiet, loving knowingness, other people, not only those that you're in a relationship with in a private, intimate, close relationship like your family, but even strangers will find that you are someone that isn't interested in having that around you. I can't tell you how many times I have been able to stifle what was a potentially explosive situation just with my presence because I refused. Not that I refused, I just don't even know how to go there any longer, how to send out that hatred and that bitterness, because it's just not within me. And they say that when Christ would come into a village, that just his presence in the village would raise the consciousness of those around. Just their presence. Mother Teresa's presence in a room, just her presence in a room. This tiny little 4'10", little tiny person who weighs about 80 pounds, but she emits this magic. You can walk into the middle of a place where there's all chaos, and just your presence can soothe and calm things down. And you'll find that people don't want to be in conflict with you when you're willing to send out that love. That new spiritual alignment allows all of your relationships with strangers and with family members to just transcend those old ways of being. All relationships have their own path that they have to traverse, and the way I think of a relationship is I think that the relationship is bigger than the people that are in it. It's the relationship itself that is beyond just the individuals. And if you're in let's say a parent-child relationship, that relationship exists in the world. Now, it exists in each person. It's located in each person, but it's also outside of those people as well. It's in that invisible realm. And there is a great deal of time in a parent-child relationship in which there are inequities. Those inequities don't seem right to the person who is doing all of the giving. But if you're on purpose, you know that giving is all that it's about anyway. And one of the songs that comes to mind is about there's a time for giving, there's a time for loving, there's a time for receiving. And there is sort of a timing that goes into a relationship. And that timing is when a child is a baby, they are totally, completely dependent upon you. And so it's about 100% giving. And what you get back, of course, are those big eyes and those beautiful looks and those gurgling sounds and that beautiful smile and it's all invisible. I mean, you know that they're communicating love to you, but they certainly aren't going to pay you an allowance. They're not going to pay rent. They're not going to provide you with what you're providing them with. They're not going to buy you clothes because you buy them. But there's a sequence to it all. It's all in divine perfection. There's like a birth, and then there's a death, and then there's a rebirth, and that's how the whole universe works in perfect sequence. And the time will come when you'll go through the teenage years, the years when you just, I call the age of demonic possession, kiddingly, when you'll receive back a lot of, who are you? You don't care about me. You don't know anything. And then there's the time when those people will get old themselves, and the child who was the child now becomes the parent, and then the parent then later becomes the child and needs to be taken care of again. And it's all in perfect sequence. And the way that you deal with all of that is that you trust and you surrender, and you know that it's in divine order. And you don't tell yourself that it shouldn't be this way, and why do I have to do all the work, and how come? It's just exactly the way it's supposed to be, and you're fitting in just the way you want to. And your feelings towards those people, for example, towards your children, are such that the thoughts and the feelings that you have are what the quality of that relationship is. And in a marriage or in a spiritual partnership, which is different than a marriage, you find the difference is that there's no one person on top and the other person on the bottom. There's no dominant and there's no submissive person, whereas marriage sometimes implies that, and often is practiced that way. And there are times when one person will, usually the woman, will be required to spend more time at home and take care of the children. It's not always that way, but it's that way more typically in Western culture. The male is out there earning a living and trying to make the whole thing fit together. There's some inequities there. There's inequities in space and in time and in privileges and so on. If this partnership is spiritual indeed, and the purpose of the relationship is to help each other to grow, then that time gets reciprocated, as I just mentioned earlier, and you make the effort to pay back and to give back some of that space and time that wasn't available at the earlier times in the relationship. If it's not a spiritual partnership, then there will be resentments that will build up, and you'll say, well, why is this me? But in fact, you can see your role in all of your relationships as all being divinely inspired and all part of the perfection of it all. So you don't tell yourself that it shouldn't be this way or shouldn't be that way. And if you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't understand that or doesn't grasp that or who is very selfish, you can move on, and very often people do move on. But you can also move on with love and with an absence of resentment, and you don't have to see it as anything other than this was a character who was to play not as permanent a role as I thought at one time. This character has been written out of this script, but their presence in it is still divine, and so I honor that. And even if it was painful, I still have to honor that. And as you get yourself on purpose, you know that when it's all about giving, then none of it is a problem. None of it is a difficulty. That the relationship and the way that you relate to others is not in terms of what's in it for me or what I'm going to get. Because if that's the way it truly worked, then no parent would ever have a second child. Because parenting generally is about giving. It's about total giving. What you get back, as I said, is that loving, knowing awareness that you are helping another human being along their path. But you certainly don't get back the same physical kinds of things that you put into it. You see, everything in life is relationship. No man is an island. Each one of us is in a relationship with everyone else on the planet, even those that we don't see. At the quantum level, we're all relating to each other all the time. We are all intimately sharing each other's organs, in a sense, because we're all breathing the atoms that somebody else breathed with millions of years ago and thousands of years ago. And technically speaking, we're all connected, even on a physical level, even though we can't see it. When you develop a knowing within you that you can make anything in any relationship work on a positive level, then you stop putting the responsibility for it working or not working on things outside of yourself, and you bring it back home to yourself. You say, I want this to work. I intend that it's going to work. When you have the intention to relate to people on a loving, spiritual way, when you have that intention, whether it's your family or whether it's strangers or whether it's workers, that intention will flow. That intention will make the physical reality of a magical relation flow beautifully and uninterruptedly from that thought, from those intentions.